The air that Tuesday morning in November was unseasonably warm, a deceitful breath of summer on a day meant for finality and cold hard facts. I sat in my car, a solitary island in a sea of parked vehicles, watching the stream of humanity ascend the concrete steps of the courthouse. Each person carried their own invisible burden, a crumpled divorce decree, a child's blurry photo, a life's worth of financial ledgers reduced to a single manila folder. They were all there to untangle a future that had become hopelessly knotted. My hands rested on the steering wheel, slick with a fine sheen of sweat despite the pleasant weather. I was here to untangle my own life. 3 years of marriage, a shared home, a dog, 1,000 quiet moments I had once believed were real, and all of it, I now knew, had been a lie. I watched the courthouse doors for a long time, waiting for the woman who had meticulously unbuilt my world, piece by piece. Then I saw her, Natasha. She walked up the steps with a gait of supreme confidence, a designer dress I had never seen before clinging to her frame. Her hair was perfectly coiffed, her smile bright and serene, a mask of the wronged wife. And beside her, a man I knew all too well, Derek. He had his hand resting on the small of her back, a gesture both protective and possessive, as if he had every right to be there, on my day of reckoning, on my ground. The sheer audacity of it was a physical blow. She had brought him to watch, to sit in the gallery and witness her final legal dismantling of me. A wave of ice and fire swept through me, a fleeting moment of pure, unadulterated fury. Then it was gone, replaced by the calm, chilling certainty of a man who held the truth and knew its weight. I reached for my phone, my thumb hovering over a contact. "Marcus," I said quietly, the word a blade cutting through the silence. "He's here." To understand this moment, you have to go back to the beginning of the end. It wasn't a thunderclap or a dramatic revelation. It was the quiet, insidious creep of suspicion. A text message notification on her phone, illuminated by the low glow of a bedside lamp. She was in the shower, the sound of the water a soft drumbeat against the tile. It was a message from a contact saved only by a first initial, D. The words were simple, but they struck me with the force of a physical blow. Can't wait to have the house to ourselves when he's finally gone. The house. Our house. The one I had poured myself into for years, working 60-hour weeks to pay the mortgage, to make a home for us. The one she had recently been lamenting we might have to sell because of my supposed career instability. The words were a cruel puzzle piece that snapped into place, revealing a picture of betrayal far more intricate than I could have imagined. I didn't confront her, not with words. I had learned long ago that confrontation was her battlefield, and she was a master of it. She would twist my questions into accusations of paranoia, my fears into proof of my inadequacy. "You're being insecure again," she would say, her voice laced with disappointment. "This is why we have problems." So I stayed silent, and I started watching. The texts, the late nights, the sudden financial struggles, all of it came into sharper focus. I began to document everything, a quiet chronicler of my own undoing. Every unexplained expense, every lie about a work meeting. I didn't want to be right. I just wanted to know the truth. I found a private investigator named Marcus through a mutual friend. He was a quiet, unassuming man with eyes that seemed to have seen everything. He went to work without fanfare, and within a few weeks, the full scope of the deception was laid bare. It was worse than a simple affair. It was a business arrangement. Derek wasn't just her lover. He was her accomplice. They had been systematically siphoning money from our joint accounts for 8 months, funneling it into a shell company registered in both their names. They were planning their future with my money, in my home. But Marcus found something else, something that made my hands shake as I read the report. Derek was wanted in 2 other states for the same exact crime, romance fraud. He found married women, convinced them to steal from their husbands, and disappeared when the trail grew hot. Natasha wasn't his first victim. She was just his current one. The realization was a strange mix of relief and horror. She hadn't been in a different kind of love, She had simply been a mark. The divorce proceedings began 3 months later. Natasha played her role to perfection. The wronged wife, exhausted and emotionally bruised by a man who couldn't provide for her. She demanded half of everything, including assets she had already stolen. Her lawyer was aggressive, a bulldog who seemed to delight in the cruelty of the process. I sat through the first mediation session, watching her across the table, the smirk of a victor playing on her lips. "I just want what's fair," she said, her voice a low, injured whisper. Fair. After stealing from me, after planning to kick me out of my own home, after treating our life together as an elaborate theater set for her next act. I just stayed quiet, patient, because I knew something she didn't. I had the final move. And so we arrived at that courtroom on that unusually warm November morning. I watched them walk up the steps, her arm now linked through his, a public declaration of a secret alliance. I knew my own lawyer, Patricia, was ready. She and Marcus had meticulously planned this. The judge called our case, and the dance began. Natasha's lawyer presented her position, painting a picture of me as a neglectful partner, a financial burden. I could see Derek in the gallery, his arms crossed, a smug spectator. He nodded along, a silent co-conspirator. It was all a performance, a well-rehearsed scene playing out before the final devastating act. Then Patricia rose. Her voice was calm and deliberate, a stark contrast to the lawyer's previous theatricality. "Your Honor, before we proceed with asset division, there are some financial irregularities we need to address." She methodically presented the evidence, bank statements showing the unauthorized transfers, documents proving the existence of the shell company, and records detailing the systematic theft of our marital assets. I watched Natasha's composure begin to crack, her eyes darting between Patricia and her lawyer. Derek, from the gallery, shifted in his seat, a flicker of unease in his posture. Patricia's voice cut through the courtroom, clear and unwavering. "Furthermore, Your Honor, we have evidence that Mrs. Hamilton's business partner, Mr. Derek Morrison, is currently wanted by federal authorities for similar fraud schemes in 2 other states." The bailiff's radio crackled. He rose from his seat and moved toward the gallery, a sudden, deliberate purpose in his stride. "We request that proceedings be suspended while federal marshals take Mr. Morrison into custody." Derek shot to his feet, a strangled protest on his lips. "There's been a mistake," he cried, his bravado gone. The bailiff's voice was a flat, final tone. "Derek Morrison, you need to come with me." The next few seconds moved in a strange, terrible slow motion, Derek scrambling back toward the exit, the bailiff moving to intercept, Natasha twisting in her seat, her face a mask of confusion and mounting horror. "What's happening?" she whispered, her perfect composure finally shattered. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened, and 2 U.S. Marshals stepped inside, professional and efficient. Derek was cuffed, his shouts a futile echo in the sudden silence of the room, and led away without another word. The man who had been sleeping in my bed, who had stolen my money and my wife, was dragged from the courtroom like the common criminal he was. The judge suspended the hearing. Natasha sat, staring at the empty space where Derek had stood, a statue of shock. Her lawyer was frantically on his phone. The game was over, and she had lost everything. I stood up, gathered my papers, and walked toward the exit. As I passed her table, she grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "How long have you known?" she whispered, her voice raw. I looked down at her, at the woman I had once loved, the woman who had systematically destroyed my world and who had just seen her own world crumble in a matter of minutes. "Long enough," I said. 3 weeks later, the full scope of Derek's operation came to light. He had stolen over $400,000 from various victims. Natasha was charged as his accomplice. It turned out that willfully ignoring the truth while helping someone commit fraud was not a valid legal defense. The divorce was finalized a month ago. I kept the house and most of the assets. She kept her legal bills and a federal conviction. I drive past the courthouse sometimes and think about that day. The way Natasha walked up the steps, so sure of her victory, only to discover she was a pawn in someone else's game. Part of me feels a distant pang of something like pity, but mostly, it's just a profound sense of peace. The house feels different now, quieter but no longer empty. It's mine again, finally. And Natasha, last I heard, was working at a call center, trying to pay off her debts. Living in a small studio apartment, alone, with nothing but the truth for company. Funny how things work out sometimes. How the person who thinks they're the chess master is just a pawn in a game they never truly understood, just like I was in hers. Until I learned the rules.